Welcome to the November Mentor Zoom for first year teachers. Let's go ahead and get going. Now, before I start advancing my slides and talking about the meetings for the month of November, I wanted to let everyone know that I am sending out a link for mentees to give feedback, and I'll share that feedback with all the mentors. I know that I've been getting feedback every month from y'all, but now it's time for the mentees to give feedback. So I'll be pushing that out tomorrow morning, FYI. All right, mentor check-in. How's it going? Type one positive thing happening in your mentoring work. Put it in the chat box. What's one positive thing happening in your mentoring work?
Sorry, Michelle, can you restate that?
Type one positive thing happening in your mentoring work into the chat box. Yes, yes, absolutely. Having that, a colleague. Absolutely. I love that. Collaboration with students in the classroom. Yes, absolutely. That's a positive thing. Yes, so there was a specific reason why I asked everyone to put something positive into the chat box, because we are moving from classroom management, talking about classroom management, to positive expectations for students. So here's what the November calendar looks like. We ask that you have 3 meetings. The week of November 6th, talking about positive expectation strategies. The week of November 13th is all about student praise and evaluating student work. And then, as always, the last week of November will be debriefing the first days of school and looking at the November checklist. So that's what November looks like. Yeah, I know that November 20th is Thanksgiving week. And there's always flexibility in your meetings. If you happen to meet on Thursday or Friday, you can push that meeting off for the following week. There's a lot of flexibility on your meeting times. All right, so the first days of school reading, just like I said before, we are moving from talking about classroom management to positive expectations for students. Remember that the 3 big ideas in the first days of school are effective teachers have good classroom management. We've been talking about that for a long time. August, September, and October. Now it's November. We're moving on to positive expectations for students. So those pages 48 through 80, are all about positive expectations. All right. So that first week of November 6th, again, is talking about positive expectations. So what does that look like in the classroom? It's routines, silent signals, proximity, positive phrasing. Really, what it really boils down to is having clear expectations. And those clear expectations are a roadmap for students to be successful. That's what it's all about. Procedures are all about what students need to do to be successful. So those positive expectations are just crucial for effective teachers. In the book, they spent a lot of time talking about negative versus positive expectations, negative versus positive, and they also, that can be equated to inviting versus disinviting. They're similar. Also, the week of November 6th, I ask that you remind your mentee that the discretionary reimbursement is available for disbursement. All they have to do is fill out the form, and on your Foursquares, I did provide a link for that discretionary reimbursement form. And last but not least, the week of November 6th, is I ask that you talk with your mentee about the late start and snow procedures at your site. it looks different at every site. And you know, it's amazing that students, they can take a very, very long time to get all their snow gear on, or you can set a procedure and set a reasonable expectation for students to get their snow gear on. So I really want you to talk to your mentee about that. Is, you know, don't let the kids snowball the new to profession teacher and thinking that it takes them 15 minutes to get the snow gear on. That's absolutely untrue. You can set realistic expectations for kids to get their snow gear on. And it looks, and again, it looks different at every site. We haven't had any late starts yet, but it's inevitable. We don't know when that snow is going to hit, but just prepping your mentee for the late start and snow procedures and what happens when you have a snow day, all of those things are good things to front load your mentee on. So I ask some of you guys in the Zoom right now, what are some different, when you think about positive expectations, what are some of the things that you implement in your practice for positive expectations? I listed what I thought were positive expectations, and the book has lots of other positive expectations, but what does that mean to you? Feel free to unmute or drop it in the chat box.
So for me is having not using the word don't, instead of change it to do sit in your seat like this, or do sharpen your pencil at the beginning of the class or at the end of the directions. So changing some of those expectations from more negative to more positive.
Yeah, the positive phrasing, yeah, is super important.
When I do behavior modifications, I try and look at the positives more than the negatives. So like on task behavior, looking at how much on task behavior is, how much are you giving those positives to negatives, really helping teachers to say there's 5 to 1, 5 positives for every negative redirection you might give to a student.
Yeah, the Wong book doesn't talk about the ratio, that recommended ratio from positive to negative, but the Randy Sprick research suggests that for every negative there should be 3 positives to parallel that negative that you give them.
And I found it to be 5 in special education.
Okay, that's a good point. Absolutely good point.
I would say, like, for kids that are misbehaving, instead of like pointing it out and like putting them on the spot, point out the kids who are doing the correct behavior that you want. So it's like, I like how Lisa is sitting crisscross applesauce on her sit spot, instead of like, so-and-so get on your sit, like not pointing out the negative so much.
Yeah, the constant redirection, the constant hammering on students with the correction, and absolutely those, I mean, those are really great strategies for sure. Okay, so I have an activity for you guys. I don't know if you've ever heard of Flippity, but I love a good Flippity. A Flippity is it's a free online Google resource that provides different activities for kids to complete online. So this is a Flippity. It's free, and I'm going to drop this link into the chat box, and I'm going to ask that you open it up. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do the activity. The directions are to sort each of the activities that you see by color into columns. So you're going to have an inviting column, and you're going to have a disinviting column. And then as you're sorting the task cards, as you're sorting them by color, I want you to think about an overarching label for each of the color. So you're going to sort into two columns. One column is going to have inviting, one column is going to have disinviting, and you're going to think about a label for each of the colors that you see. Okay, so here's the activity, and we'll come back together let's come back together at 3:05. Okay, it's 3:05. You just completed your Flippity, and the actual activity that you were doing is called manipulatives. The Flippity has all kinds of different things, flashcards, matching activities, but what you did was manipulatives. And this particular Flippity is great for review or practice in a particular area. Okay, so here are the answers. Check to see that you got the correct behaviors in inviting and the correct behaviors in disinviting, and what kind of overarching labels did you give each of the colors? What I came up with was the yellows or the different body language that you give kids. Inviting would be smiling, nodding, listening attentively, while disinviting would be sneering, ignoring kids, or the sign, and then the orange are kind of the thoughts that teachers might have about kids. Like making mistakes is okay. It is a positive expectation, while you wouldn't want kids thinking, I never know the right answer. So the orange are the thoughts, positive versus negative. I was thinking that the purples were verbals. Those are the things that teachers or students might say. And then for pink, were the physical environment, showcasing student work. Having a clean, organized classroom is a positive expectation for kids. It says that you care about the classroom, while having graffiti or leftover food might be disinviting. Any comments on this activity that you did? Anything that I missed? What could we add to this? All right, so we talked about the week of November 6th being about positive expectations, talking about what that could look like in your mentee's classroom. We talked about the discretionary form. We talked about what snow days and late starts look like. For November 13th, that week, I'm recommending that you talk with your mentee about the specific versus general praise, and we'll talk more about that, and maybe start encouraging your mentee to start thinking about evaluating student work. All right, so let's dig in here to general versus specific praise. At the end of the day, when you give kids praise, it's feedback. You're telling them, you're giving them some feedback that what they did was good. Now there's definitely a purpose for general, and there's definitely a purpose for specific praise. General praise is saying things like, good job, awesome, nice work. It's very general, while specific praise calls the student out by name, identifies exactly what you saw that they did well, and then it encourages them to do that again. So it's super important to tell students that they did something correctly, because at the end of the day, you want them to replicate it. You know, you want them to repeat that behavior. So that specific praise definitely is going to help get kids to their goal faster. It could be saying, class, you called out the entire class. Thank you for walking in the hallway quietly. I would like to do that every time. It might look like saying, green table, thank you for passing the papers up. I love it when you follow procedures. So definitely, when you talk to your mentee about the difference between general and specific praise, let them know that there's a purpose for each of them. However, that specific praise is going to help students get to improve quicker, because you're specifically calling out the behavior that you want them to replicate. So I included some research in this presentation about positive expectations, because I just think it's important. These are the findings from a study that was done twice over 50 years. And these are the things that we as teachers have been documented to do when you're thinking about the low achievers. So I'm going to give you a chance to read through all of the bullet points. And I also want to point out that very often teachers' perceptions become students' reality. So if you think a kid, and when I say you, I'm talking about mentees, I'm talking about teachers in general. When teachers think that kids can do things, they probably can. But if teachers think that a kid can't do it, then they most certainly cannot. So teachers' perceptions often become students' reality. So go ahead and read through those bullet points. At the end of the day, you know, when we know better, we do better. So that's why I wanted to bring this slide to light. You know, when we know better, we do better. So how does this study make you feel? How does it make you feel when you think about when you think about somebody a student who's struggling, that their student experience is some of these bullet points? How does that make you feel?
Kind of heartbroken for that kid.
Yeah.
Or kids.
Yeah, it makes me sad that we have students in classrooms that this is their classroom experience, and then you wonder why they don't like school.
Unmotivated to do anything. It's really just, you know, if there's no one giving me attention or any feedback, why would I want to try?
If my teacher doesn't think I can do it, then I'm just not going to bother even meeting that teacher halfway. Yeah. So again, I show this to you because I think it's important to just be aware of what research is out there. So, and yeah, this definitely makes me really sad to think that there's kids out there, you know, and this is their classroom experience. So this is a very busy slide. It has a lot of information on it, and it's all about analyzing student work. Teaching is a thinking profession. It really is. Teaching is a thinking profession. And so the reason why tasks, the reason why we ask students to turn in work is so that we can identify strengths and weaknesses. We want to identify what students can know or are able to do, and what instructional shifts might need to happen based on the student work that students are completing and turning in. So why do we analyze them? Because we want to identify what they know or are able to do. And we want to make sure that the instruction is tailored to where their needs really are. What might you analyze? You're going to analyze writing is a given. You can analyze projects, quizzes, unit tests, exit tickets, all these. Anytime any artifact that a student turns in has the capacity to be analyzed. And so I have a form here for you to check out. And this is a form that I'm going to ask you to share with your mentee to start their creative juices flowing about analyzing work. New teachers, they're probably not here yet. They're not at a point where they're able to take, a writing project and analyze it to the depth that you'll be able to analyze it. However, it's a good time to it's an opportunity to start that process with them. And so if you check out that link I just dropped in, you'll notice that this form allows a teacher who's analyzing student work to really dig down deeper into what proficiency looks like on any given piece of work. And then it gives you an opportunity to figure out what percentage of the students are meeting, who have met the proficiency level, have exceeded the proficiency level, and partially meets or does not meet proficiency at all. So this gives you this artifact gives you data points to inform your instruction when you're moving forward. Now, again, new teachers probably aren't here yet, but it's a good opportunity to start getting them thinking about analyzing student work. And they may not be at a point in their practice where they want to do that with you yet. However, it's certainly okay for you to take a stack of your papers and model for them what analyzing could look like. So I give all this information to you as just a starting point for analyzing student work, because that's really where we should be. You want them to acknowledge that teaching is a thinking profession, and thinking professionals are going to instruct efficiently and be data informed when they're planning their instruction. Any comments or questions on this slide? This is a very busy slide.
Could you resend the link to the form? Because the one you put in there is just the flippity one.
Oh,
Again.
of course. Sorry about that. I thought
That's
I had
okay.
put it in.
There.
Maybe I didn't. Yeah, I'll give you a minute to check out the form. We did a lot of work around deciding who had met the standard, who didn't meet the standard back in California. And it was really successful in targeting instruction to meet kids' needs. So this process really does work. All right, so the last week of November is the first day of school debrief, pages 48 through 50, all about positive expectations. And so the Wongs reiterate that teacher expectations have the power to affect student outcomes. So it's all about if a teacher thinks that a kid can do something, they probably can. Alternatively, if a teacher doesn't think a kid cannot do something, they won't. They most certainly will not be able to. So creating a culture of invitation through verbal, nonverbal thoughts and physical environment is super important to create that culture for learning, because at the end of the day, that's what your mentee is creating in their classroom, a culture for learning. And we want them to have positive expectations for kids. Also, the pages talk a little bit about how teachers are models for students, that they're watching you at all times. Students watch their mentee teachers, they watch them. So modeling, you know, appropriate dress, appropriate behavior, appropriate attitude, expectations for success. That's super important to know that your mentee or any teacher at any site, that all eyes are on them at all times. So modeling that, what behavior you want to see them replicate is super important. Also on page 66 is that the 4 levels of invitations. So you might want to point that out to your mentee, that page. And so that chart is an opportunity to start thinking about the difference between intentionally and unintentionally inviting. So your mentee teacher may intentionally have positive expectations, but they could unintentionally have positive expectations for students. So some things are unintentional. So as your mentee's cheerleader, you get the opportunity to point out all the positive things that you see happening in their classroom. All right, last 2 things. If you don't have any questions about the week of November 6th, November 13th, or November 20th, we have last 2 things to look at. Make sure you have your October Foursquare. So open up a new window and open up your drive and be looking for those 3 Foursquares. And I color coded them. I started color coding them just so that it'll be easier for me to see, for you guys to see they're orange. So look for your October Foursquares. And I also invite you to check out the November checklist. And so I dropped that link in the chat. And on the Foursquares are all the links that you'll need. Are you both seeing your Foursquares? Yes, perfect. And you're checking out
I usually just share them straight out with my mentee so that they have
That's
them
great.
to look over.
That's great. Awesome. So that's all I had for you today. So I opened the floor up for questions if you have any. Otherwise, I hope you have fun Thanksgiving plans. Is anybody going out of state? No?
Nope.